Hello and welcome back to our channel. Today we're visiting Maen Ceti, also popularly known as King Arthur's Stone. This site sits in the Gower Peninsula in Wales, on the ancient ridgeway of Cefn Bryn, locally known as the backbone of the Gower. The capstone is made of a quartz conglomerate, estimated to weigh 25 tonnes. It stands on only 4 of the uprights, and another 10-ton piece lays next to it, split long ago and toppled from the uprights from which it was standing. Its construction is thought to date back at least 4,500 years, and possibly much more. In this video we will explore the history and folklore behind how this monument came to be, what it was used for, and how the stone was split. While researching this video, we found that the name has been changed and reinterpreted many times over its recorded history, masking its true origins behind layers of myth and mystery. Multiple texts claim the name could mean anything from an alignment with the stars to an association with Noah and the Ark. But after a few days of sifting through books from the 1800s on the Open Library, which is an amazing free resource by the way, link in the description, we found enough correlations with this site and others we've covered in previous videos that we can start to paint a clearer picture of the scattered stories. But let's begin with the most popular modern incarnations, so that we can delve into the origins behind them, starting with King Arthur. Legend has it that during a walk in Carmarthenshire, Arthur felt a pebble in his shoe, and upon finding it he threw it into the air. The stone grew bigger and bigger as it flew across the landscape and fell into the Gower. This storyline of a legendary figure casually tossing capstones into place is a pretty familiar one by now, but according to locals, the name Arthur's Stone is a modern mistranslation, and the site was once called Arthstone, with Arth meaning bear in Welsh, and that the site is aligned with the bear constellation. Although we have found other casual references to this alignment, no diagram or description is available as we edit this video. Another tale implies that the stone is an entity all of its own and could simply have placed itself there. Furthermore, on certain nights, particularly Midsummer's Eve and All Hallows' Eve, Maen Ceti gets up and goes to the sea to drink and bathe, before once again returning to its perch of its own free will. A popular tradition holds that at midnight, when the moon was full, young maidens would test the fidelity of the men that they loved by offering the stone a cake baked from barley meal and honey wetted with milk. They would place the cake in the spring, then circle the stone 3 times on their hands and knees, knowing that if the man they loved appeared before them before they finished their final circuit, he would make a faithful husband. In 1848, James Motley describes this exact ritual in his book, Tales of Cymry, stating that it is still practiced at Arthur's Stone and is perverted as it perpetuates Druidism. The main quote from his book reads, "A species of divination is still practiced at Arthur's Stone by the neighbouring rustic maidens, who have little idea that they are perpetuating, perverted indeed in its object, the rites of Druidism and the mysteries of Eleusis in their proprietary offering." So far, we've had multiple references to the stone drinking and bathing in the sea, and the existence of a spring or sacred well beneath it. It was also commonly claimed that the spring below the stone was affected by the moon and moved with the tides. In a book of folk stories from 1909, Mary Trevelyan wrote that it is a spring which is said to move with the ebb and flow of the tide. It is called Finon Fire, or Our Lady's Well. The water therefrom was lifted in the palm of a hand while the person who drank it wished. The spring has far-reaching fame and is mentioned again and again. A book from 1811 says, "Tradition hands down its celebrity for great cures, and it has been customary for the adjacent neighbourhood to resort to it on Sunday evenings, to drink its water and pay the tribute of throwing in a pin." Unsurprisingly, early Christians claimed that the spring was created by one of their own, Saint David. Not only this, they credit the saint with the act of splitting the stone. He apparently did this because Maen Ceti was adored and revered by the pagans. So David took his sword and split the stone in proof that it was not sacred, nor was it some great entity. He then commanded a well to spring from under it, which flowed accordingly. After this event, those who previously were infidels became converted to the Christian faith. However, as we mentioned in our previous video about Saint David and his mother Saint Non, much of his story was written by monks many hundreds of years after his death. And even the church struggles to frame these as anything other than pro-Christian propaganda. So as much as I believe many ancient monuments were damaged, destroyed and built upon by Christians over the ages, the symbolic destruction in this tale is likely a fabrication from as recent as the last few hundred years. In 1833, Samuel Lewis gives a frustratingly loose indication of when the stone was split. He says, "Within the recollection of persons still living, a huge fragment which has been broken off with great labour by means of wedges and intended for the purpose of a millstone, was found totally unfit for that purpose." And in 1905, S. Baring-Gould wrote, "At one time it was much larger, but pieces have been broken off for millstones, for which they are unfitted, being composed of pudding stone. One very large piece, 30 foot in circumference, was taken off by wedges, but not completely. Those who began to mutilate the stone abandoned the task, but wind and rain completed what they had begun." But whether the stone was split in the 18th century by millstone masons, or in the 6th century by St. David, neither answers who built it and for whom. Well, this is where it gets complicated. The further back we go, the fewer written records there are, as most information was passed on through word of mouth. But then we found multiple references to a goddess who is featured predominantly at other dolmens around Pembrokeshire, Cerridwen. The Welsh Triads are a tradition of storytelling that present events and important people in groups of 3. The earliest texts are from the late 13th century, but the practice is believed to be much older and based on the tradition of handing down stories through word of mouth. It is said that a type of druidic order used these sites as ritualistic meeting places, where they would recite the triads and, by repeating them, impart and instill the generational knowledge. And this cromlech is mentioned in Iolo Morgannwg's 18th century triad as one of the 3 Herculean labours. Triad 88 described the 3 works of might of the island of Britain: erecting of the stone of Ceti, erecting Stonehenge, Emrys, and the piling of Mount Cyfragon. However, while Iolo is well respected in Wales, and his work was vital in preserving national history and folklore, it is worth mentioning that many still consider Iolo's writings to be unreliable. As Iolo is known to have travelled widely, gathered many texts, and conversed in detail with untold antiquarians, it is accepted that he may be writing from a direct account that has been handed down. Others say he has added his own personal embellishment in the writings. To add to the mystery, there also seems to be some confusion over the name in the triad, Ceti, and whether it relates to this site or to a place called Lanyon Quoit in Cornwall. The following quote from the Western Antiquary, published in November 1884, was apparently printed in relation to the site in Cornwall, but many believe it actually refers to the site in Gower. In it were performed various ceremonies relating to the bardic orders, with a reference to the great event of the deluge, and the primary one of these was the sheathing of the sword as a token of peace, and insulated from all the parties and disputes of the world. Being particularly dedicated to the archite genius, it was entitled Maen Ceti, the stone of Ceti, or the Ark, and the raising of it was, according to the Triads, one of the 3 mighty labours of the Isle of Britain. In it were celebrated all the mysteries of Cerridwen, or Ceti, and in it her mystical cauldron was said to be warmed by the breath of 9 damsels. Here the adventurous aspirants beheld some of the mysteries of Druidism, when admitted behind the veil which on such occasions was hung over the entrance. And in the 1877 book, Mysteries of Freemasonry, John Fellows writes, "Kit is no other than Ked or Cerridwen, the British Ceres, and Coti or Ceti meant ark or chest, hence the compound word referred to the ark of the Diluvian god Noah, whose mysterious rites were celebrated in Britain, and Cerridwen was either the consort of Noah or the ark itself, symbolically the great mother of mankind." In this passage, Fellows is apparently referring to Kit Coti in Kent, but the translation is another indication that the ancient goddess Cerridwen could be who this monument was originally erected in honour of. As we read this passage, Coral and I both realised where our research was taking us. Back to Pentrhyfan. We first mentioned Cerridwen's connection to Pentrhyfan in our video on the Bleeding Ewe Nevern, as there is a carved stone representing her within the church there. But since then, references to her have appeared at nearly every site we've been to, and her influence is inexplicably intertwined with early Christian lore. Before finding these 2 entries, multiple results linking Maen Ceti to a translation of a cauldron or box or an ark had gone by without explanation. But now we have a direct link between the pagan goddess of rebirth and Christianity's symbolical rebirth after the flood. Could this avenue lead us to a better understanding of the connection between these ancient sites and how they influenced modern religion? Please subscribe to our channel to find out more next time as we return to one of our favourite local sites.